Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Great to have Sumner High School with us again. Thank you, guys. And I'd also like to thank again Amanda Sheerans over here, Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. She gave our presentation last month. And we're excited to build on that today. And I'll introduce John in just a second. As many of you probably know, Schoodic Institute at Acadia National Park is here to advance ecosystem science and learning for all ages, and we do that through a very unique partnership with the National Park Service. So if you'd like to learn more, please sign up for our e-newsletter. Thank you for everybody who maybe did that on the sign-in sheet that's going around. We're a community-supported organization, and we very much appreciate your involvement. Next month, we have a very exciting talk with our own staff ecologists, our bird ecologist, Seth Benz, who's sitting right here, as well as our forest ecologist, Nick Fisicelli. And their talk is titled Harbingers of Spring, and you can come and learn about all of the spring birds and plants that we'll be seeing emerge in the coming months. So thank you for your attendance if you can make it. Corporal John MacDonald is here, and he represents the Maine Warden Service. He's been with them for 19 years, and for the past 6 years, he's helped manage the Northwoods Law television series. He's in charge of public affairs, recruitment, outreach for the Warden Service, and we feel very lucky to have him here today to help share that story with us. So let's give him a big round of applause, and we'll have time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Sounds like it's working pretty well. It's really my pleasure to be here. I've never been down on the peninsula before. It is absolutely beautiful. The ride up, Amanda and I were talking about, I generally am vacationing over on the island, as is probably most everybody, right, during the summertime, but this has definitely given me a new direction for some enjoyment here in the future, so it's beautiful out here. But thank you very, very much for inviting us to come back up. And it is my pleasure to talk about the TV show. It has been, for the most part, very, very good for us, and I'm happy to talk about it. I have a PowerPoint that I brought that I didn't really think it would fit in as well as it probably will actually fit in pretty good to this discussion, but it was designed for a talk that I did actually over on the West Coast in Seattle last fall. But I think it'll fit in pretty well to what we're going to talk about. So whatever it doesn't, we'll skip by that slide and we'll keep on going. But as advertised, I am John MacDonald, and I'm a game warden. I have been for almost 19 years. I was a deputy game warden before that, which is kind of a wannabe game warden. And it's a great stepping stone position to become full-time, but did that for a few years, so I've been around the Warden Service for, I guess, over 20. I live down in Pownell. Anybody ever heard of Pownell? My gosh, there's 2 people. It's great. I always say I live in a little town next to Freeport, and that helps usually, but with my family. And I started out as a game warden. How much time do I have, first of all? Anybody know? About 1 hour. About 1 hour? Okay. Because I can talk. I started out as a district game warden. Just a little bit about me, and we'll get right into this stuff. In primarily York County, I came on with what should have been about 6 game wardens surrounding me in different districts, but we had some vacancies, and there was only 1. So Tim Spar, who's on the show, and I were really the only 2 game wardens in York County for about 2 years. And when I was off, he was on. When he was on, I was off. So we had like this big territory with a lot of people to cover. So I cut my teeth down there, lived in Cornish. Probably nobody knows where that is either. As a game warden, you live in a lot of towns that no one's ever heard of. But moved back home, got the opportunity to in 2002, where I live now. Worked there as a game warden. That patrol covered like Freeport and Pittsburgh and Harpswell, Durham, Pownell, Bath, those types of areas. Had about 6 or 7 towns. A little bit of a change from the Cornish area, but In 2008 or 9, I got pulled out of the field to do some special projects, kind of slowly progressed into a full-time position that was needed for project management. Back then, a few different projects. This one came up in about 2010. The job incorporated what is now my highest priority, which is media relations. So media relations really takes up about 60% of what I do now. Public relations, media relations, things like that. And recruitment, I'm the recruiter, the full-time guy anyway. Just any other projects that come along, social media-wise, public service announcements, those types of things. So it's a PR job, basically. 2010, I was tasked. I worked for the colonel of the Warden Service, which is the chief. And he had a piece of paper, which is shown in this slide somewhere. These are some goals that we had. How do we do this? A TV show. We'd never been on TV. Amanda and I were talking on the way up that when I got hired almost 20 years ago now, media, TV, that wasn't really our thing. We didn't run away from it, but it was close. We kind of wanted to stay under the radar and didn't really want to get a lot of attention, which has its benefits, I suppose, but it's not really very progressive-minded. So, can you hear me okay? Yeah? I mumble a little bit. I just want to make sure you could hear me. Is that better? So we've changed. We've had a new administration. We've had several since I've been a game warden, but in 2010, we embarked on a project that was given to me as just a letter from National Geographic. And I'm new to this position, and I'm getting this letter from National Geographic, so I'm thinking that's a pretty big deal. Called the production company out there, the woman that was on the letter, and said, "Hey, I'm John MacDonald from Maine." And she said, "Well, you're a little slow in the uptake." The letter was like 6 months old. We had a change in administration. This wasn't a top priority at the time to talk about a TV show. So I got this a little late. And she said, "We've already talked to California, and we've started the show California Game Wars," which used to be on back in 2009, 2010. And that was really one of the first shows. Alaska State Trooper was kind of coming about then too, but hadn't really got a lot of traction. So I'm like, oh geez, I blew that one. No TV show for us. But before I hung up with her, she said, "Well, there's this young lady that used to work for us as of like a month ago at the time, and she works for this little production company in New York called Engel Entertainment. And call her." So I did. And that began a relationship with this production company out of New York. Her name is Cara Biega. We're still friends. She no longer works there, but we maintain a friendship. And just started to talk about the job, and she knew nothing about it. California Game Wars and Alaska State Trooper was starting to get some good traction, so there was more of a need from the networks to have a competitive show. Game Wars was on Geographic, and at the time, they didn't know what network this show might go on. So, at any time, too, feel free to ask questions. We don't need to wait to the end, so feel free. Kind of went over some of this stuff, but how do we do all this? What kind of attention are we going to get? We had some goals. I guess I'll start with that. TV show. That's the letter. 2009. And I didn't really pick it up until, it was like April or May of 2010. So I was a little slow on that. But that's how it started. And called Carrie Regan, and she gave me Kara's number. And so we started on this talk. They started to come to Maine, doing little pilot shows. And it was a little bit too weird. They wanted to do staged things and have us do things that we would typically do, but not really real-time in the moment stuff, kind of reenact stuff that maybe we did a month ago that was kind of cool. And we're like, this doesn't feel good. Our game wardens don't want to do this. It looks fake. Maine people aren't going to like it. Unfortunately, we wouldn't have done it anyway, but they listened. So we're like, you know what? There's enough action that happens. Why don't you just ride with us? And if something happens, great. If it doesn't, good. And so that's how it worked out. So we started these little pilot shows. And what they do in the production company world, and probably some of you might know this, but what they do is these production companies get a good idea on tape and a little condensed like movie trailer, and they go to these network yearly shows, I guess, where you try to sell your idea to the networks. So you got National Geographic there, you got Animal Planet, Discovery, so on and so forth. I think it's Animal Planet or Discovery. I think it's Discovery that's the big umbrella company. I could be getting this wrong, but they own 13 networks. And so they're kind of one of those companies you want to connect with on a TV show because they can distribute it in a bunch of different areas. So anyway, Kara and her team had put together a pretty cool movie trailer of us back in 2010 or 11, I forget what, it was right around probably the change of the year. And like I said, Game Wars was doing good, Alaska State Trooper, and Animal Planet was pretty anxious to get something off the ground. And the Game Warden show, of course, fit in with Animal Planet. And they bought into the idea and said, hey, give us 6 episodes and we'll try this. So we did. But before we did that, we had to do a few things. We had to get approval from the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office. Just an agreement between us that protected us well. Passenger release forms. I mean, we have people that ride with us that are interested in being game wardens, but that's typically in our truck. So now we had to incorporate people riding in our boats and our airplanes and our snowmobiles and all that stuff. So we had to kind of include all that. Show title. We didn't realize how important that was until they gave us a bad idea. And their first throw at us was Backwoods Justice. And we're like, oh my gosh, we just did all this work and they're going to call it Backwoods Justice? And so it was my job to call them with the bad news and say, we aren't going to do this. Not going to happen. And they were pretty adamant that they were going to. This is John MacDonald now talking to Animal Planet people. Who's he? And still that way, hasn't changed. But anyway, we persuaded them to. We liked Northwoods Law, so we came up with the name Northwoods Law. North Maine Woods, Northwoods Law. You know, it just seemed to be a good representation of us. So we came up with that, and we sent it back to them, and they're like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. We had to come up with an end date, which was something we did a little late in the process. Maine Warden Service gets a TV show idea. We're not thinking about 6 years out. We're thinking about 6 months out. So the end date for us was not important. We like, oh, this will probably just die out on its own. But after this got traction, and we were like in the 30 or 40 episodes, we're like, when is this going to end? Or can we end this thing? It wasn't a bad thing, but we're like, what grounds do we stand on? So we had to kind of make an amendments as we went along to this agreement that, okay, we'll draw a line on the sand here, and by mutual agreement, let's continue each year by year. So they allowed us to do that. We wanted them to allow us to have use of their footage for recruitment purposes, for tourism purposes, whatever. We got thousands and thousands of hours of really, really good stuff that would take us a lifetime to capture on our own. That's high quality. It's, you know, the drone footage from the air. And so we have access to all that stuff, which is kind of a nice little fringe benefit of this, because we didn't get paid And I don't know if it's, compensation, I skipped over that. It's kind of a big one. A lot of the states, and I get it, I still get it. How much do you guys get paid for Northwoods Law? And we didn't get paid anything because we can't. It's a state law. It'd be like receiving, gifts or gratuity or whatever. So we couldn't do that. So but that's good because you don't want to be into something like that for the money. At least from our perspective, we didn't want to be. If we were a private family or something like Duck Dynasty, yeah, maybe it'd be kind of nice to earn some money out of your family legacy or whatever it might be. But had we gotten paid, yeah, we probably could have made a lot of money, but it'd have been for a pretty short amount of time. And what do you do with that big spike in money? Do you hire 20 game wardens or whatever? And then once you lose the funding, then what do? You lay 20 off? I don't know. It just really didn't make sense for us anyway to make money. So beside the point, didn't make any money, but we had some goals of recruitment, public support, legislative support, public understanding, and not just for Maine game wardens, but for everybody that does this work across the country. So that was our goal, is to help increase people's knowledge and appreciation of that line of work. The most important thing is that I don't think I've ever used a pointer, so I'm going to use a pointer. Was the review and editing rights, and that is like unheard of, uncharted territory for production companies to have the subject of their show have review rights of their footage. That's like, no way. So John MacDonald was responsible for talking to the Angle Entertainment lawyer, which is a big-time Manhattan lawyer, and that was probably one of the highest intensity phone calls I've ever had, trying to convince that person, who is now my friend, that we're going to do this with review rights or we're not going to do this. Because there's so many subtleties in law enforcement, and some that aren't so subtle, that have to be right in this show, that if something airs that we don't have control over, it could be the end of a lot of different things, our credibility or just process of law, those types of things. So after, well, it's probably multiple days, but a lot of conversations, they consented to let us have those review rights. And it worked, I think, to their advantage, because we know our work. We know what is genuine about it, and to have it be any other way would not have been a good reflection upon us, I don't think. And I don't think anybody in this room, if you've watched the show, would have liked it nearly as much to have reenactments and have just over-dramatized facts and things. So we wanted it real. We did. Now, that's John Parker and Pete Herring. That's at Camp Northwoods, which is a program we started kind of as a legacy project to of Northwoods Law. They're both kind of clowns, but it's just an opportunity that we've created through Bryant Pond right now, in the town of Bryant Pond. It's the 4-H camp there, and about 200 kids go there every summer now. 100 boys, 100 girls, different weeks for the boys and for the girls. And they basically get immersed with game wardens from the show, and they hunt, they fish, they ATV, they boat, they kayak, shooting sports. I mean, they're shooting shotguns, kids that have never been around that stuff before, and they're hitting clay pigeons after just a few rounds of this stuff, and they're having a time of their life, and it's pretty cool. Some of the kids have some experience, some have none, and the parents come on Fridays, and they kind of show their parents what they've done all week. We let the parents do that stuff too, and hopefully they go home with an appreciation, and maybe they'll do that stuff as part of their life, hobbies, and whatever. Great program, it really is. And kind of supplement, or they get a couple $100 taken off of the tuition. It's usually about $625 to go for a week, and that's staying there and that's feeding them. Those it's pretty reasonable. But we take $200 off that for the kids, so it's like $425, and that's through some funding from the department that we've got. The first few years, Animal Planet actually kicked in about $75,000. That's kind of how they paid us back a little bit. They gave us $75,000 to put towards some of the tuition for the kids, and so it's pretty. It's ages 8 to 12, but we break it down into 100 girls that are. We have different groups within that week of girls, say, and it's 8 to 10-year-olds in some of the teams or groups, and then there's 10 to 12-year-olds, so to speak. So we try to group them by age somewhat, because sometimes there's a big difference between a 8-year-old and a 12-year-old, sometimes more than others. So we try to get them together with age and gender as much as possible, just for the competition of it, I guess. You know, if you get somebody there that's really good at shooting sports, and then you get someone that isn't, or maybe it's age specific or whatever. We just want people to feel, kids to feel comfortable as possible there. And the game wardens are there with them 24 hours a day, really, other than when they're sleeping. And the Bryant Pond staff is fantastic. They've been in this business forever, and they got it down. It works out good. Probably the most difficult part of running a show is when we capture fatal crashes and incidents on camera. That's search and rescue stuff, recreational vehicle crashes, hunting incidents, whatever. And we had a few instances where if we hadn't had the relationship with the production company that we have or had, it could have been bad. Trying to think of probably the best example is a young man. He was 17 or 19, I forget which. He died in the Kennebec River. He was swimming and he drowned. And we captured that on film. We knew the father fairly well. He was I can't remember if he was a deputy sheriff, and his wife. We thought we had our bases covered. Little did we know, about 2, 3, 4 months afterwards, after they put the show together, the episode, we didn't know that the boy had a mother that was not married to the father, so they were divorced. She was in the hospital when he was killed, when he died. So this was stuff that we should have figured out, but we missed, and we didn't deal with her as much as we should have through this incident. So she calls me about a week before this airs and said, "You will not have my son's death on national television. I have to drive by that place every day on my way to work," she says, "and I'm not going to stand for it." And there was no obligation on our part not to listen to her. But our goals going into the show were to make sure we listened to people like that. And we did. I said, we are not going to air that episode. So I had to then it wasn't as difficult, but challenging phone calls, calling the production company and saying, "You know that movie you had set to go for next Sunday night? This was like Tuesday. Can't play that." And that's big business. You know, $100,000 for a 30-second commercial for a hit TV show. And here's John MacDonald calling them again with this request to pull this television show. And they pulled strings, and they did everything they could because they shared the same values as us and said, "This is wrong, we got to do the right thing," and they pulled it. Animal Planet didn't do it, the production company did it. Nothing against Animal Planet, but they're in business for business and money. So that was just an example of having to work with Maine people and do the right thing. We had to train the camera crew on some safety items, and if there happened to be a shooting that they rolled into, what they had to do, so we had to go through some training. Selecting of the game wardens, that was not easy. I don't care what business you're in, you're going to have employees around you that want to be on the show and probably should be. Want to be on the show and probably shouldn't be. And there's, goes on and on. Although I'd put my life on the line for any of the guys I work next to and women, but to have them on a TV show, national TV show, they're probably not the best fit. And how do you tell somebody that wants to be on the show? Well, I asked my boss to do that, so he did. So that wasn't easy, but it worked out. Then you get the people that don't want to be on the show that probably should be. These are the first pictures of the first day of filming. Oh, that one's not. That's a little older, but this was our first day of filming. I was standing over here watching all this going on, and that's Rick LaFlame, Chris McCabe, Scott Thrasher. I don't know who that is, but McCabe. This is when we were cutting our teeth as TV stars, so to speak. Talked about this. What are we going to do with all the attention? Kind of made that photo up, but I mean, if you're Chris McCabe going through Farmington, this isn't really, that's not like unheard of. It wasn't quite that bad, but how do you deal with that? So yeah, we got a new level of attention. We had 75 episodes, media, public, and recruitment, all increased, and those are all my job. So my job went from here to here. So now every time there's a game warden story, and it doesn't have to be very significant anymore, it seems to just have more attention given to it. Especially when things are right at their peak, when the show is right in the middle of production 2 or 3 years ago. I routinely had calls from Good Morning America, British Broadcasting Company, whatever the other morning shows are, in, New York. They just wanted these special stories because there was a game warden attached to it from Maine. I don't know as we ever really did too many of them because it didn't really make sense to do them. Geraldine Largay, I don't know if you guys remember that search we had for Geraldine Largay. She died on the Appalachian Trail. She got lost and got off trail. And that's one of them that made big news. That probably would have regardless, but there were a lot of other examples along the way that probably otherwise would not have gotten a lot of attention, but did. That's just kind of an example. Down East Magazine, articles, Maine Public Radio, now our Facebook, Twitter. Who does Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff in here? Probably a lot of you. What's the other one? Instagram? You guys do that? Snapchat? I was not, probably still am not, like a social media guru, but I kind of had to become one a little bit. Our Facebook page in 2012, I think it was, or 13, before the show really got traction, was about 20,000 followers or so, and it really peaked out pretty quickly. We got 105,000 followers now on Facebook. Our Twitter followers are a pretty impressive number. I couldn't tell you what it is off the top of my head, but 5 years ago when we posted a picture of something, fairly newsworthy, it would get some attention, but now when I put up posts of search and rescue photos or a whole host of things, they call it going viral, and they do. They get 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 hits, sometimes close to 1 million. So it's a very, very powerful tool. I absolutely hated Facebook about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Didn't want to be any part of it, but I had to. And I've kind of come to appreciate it. I wouldn't say I love it, but something I have to do. And it's a good tool for us. Oh, there's some numbers there, I guess. That was as of last summer, so things have gone up a little bit. We get tied into a lot of organizations because of the Northwoods Law show. Gifford's Ice Cream, Portland Sea Dogs, Red Claws, Special Olympics, Camp Sunshine. There's many, many more. Those are just the ones I could find logos for. We have Northwoods Law Day at the Sea Dogs Park now, and there's like 7,000 people show up on that day. They have longer lines than their baseball players to get autographs, and it's like super humbling. I kind of go in plain clothes and let the guys from the show get all the fame, you know, but I stand back and watch this line of hundreds and hundreds of people, and the kids, parents. Sometimes I think the parents are just as excited to be there as the kids, but it's great. The recruitment for kids, whether they want to be game wardens or not, it doesn't really matter to me, but it's just the fact that they get a new appreciation in this little, it's a new opportunity, I guess, for them to consider going forward. If, at the very least, they become appreciative of, you know, what a responsible outdoors person is and does. Maybe they do things the right way rather than the wrong way in the future. So whatever they, you know, whatever impression they get from the show, overall, it's going to be a good one, I think. And it has been a good one. That camp that I talked to you about, Camp Northwoods, as many as about 1,000 kids put in for that. We can only take 200, so it gets a lot of interest from all over the country. 70% of the kids are from Maine, 30% are from out of the country, or out of the state, rather. One little girl from Australia was there last year. She flew here with her family. That was kind of cool. There's just some pictures of events. These here are signing cards, and I brought some with me. You guys are welcome to have some on your way out. All the game wardens signed them, and so if you are big fans of the show and you want one, you're welcome to have one on the way out. Recruitment's been a big deal for us. I used to talk to, as the recruiter, about 150 people a year or so, and it's actually more than 400%. I talk to between 800 and 1,000 people now a year who want to be game wardens. And it can be, it's the whole gamut. It's the person that's probably really well suited right now, or it's the 18, 17-year-old kid that's looking to go to college for it. It's the 30 or 40-year-old that wished they'd done it 10, 15 years ago, and how do I get there? It's everybody, and sometimes it's a phone call, sometimes it's coffee, sometimes it's email, but it's about 800 to 1,000 people now, so it's been good. And we hire usually about 6 or 7 game wardens a year, and the quality applicants are very, very good. We're very happy with who applies. Recruitment video, that kind of ties into the footage that we got. We have a new recruitment video. I won't show it here, but it really is helpful for things like that. Where do we go from here? I kind of skipped ahead of where I should have, but kind of where we go with it is like Camp Northwoods, for instance, is a good example for us. We have taken on a new project within the department of continuing to highlight our employees, because people really like to see what game wardens, biologists, they just like to see that they're real people. And Northwoods Law showed that. Kind of showed them getting home sometimes and spending time with their family and doing their off-time things. And it's really important for people that buy hunting and fishing licenses, or whether you hike or canoe or kayak or whatever you do, if you just come to Maine to vacation. How much investment there is felt by department employees, kind of where they come from. They're all, most of them hunt and fish. They get a real passion for hunting or the outdoors in general. And we're going to try to tie the fact that we all work together really for the state, for the Maine outdoors. And we got a new slogan coming up that we're going to start pushing out with everything we give out and what you see, but it's all in for the Maine outdoors. And that's really kind of sums it up pretty well, is that's what we're in it for, is the outdoors. And my daughter's 6, and She thinks hunting's pretty cool, and fishing, and four-wheeling, and snowmobiling, and all that stuff. And she's going to do other things too, but it's important, I think, to see, for the public, to see where we come from and what part we play in, protecting and enhancing the outdoors of Maine. That's one of our plans. And we talked about some of these things, social media, we got to keep up with that, traditional media, trying to get us out in front of people as much as we can with a message. Public events like this, schools, highlighting staff as individuals, merchandising, branding. Whether we know it or not, this Maine symbol right here for across the country is probably one of the most recognizable IF&W symbols in the nation. And it was from some good marketing techniques about a dozen years ago. The merchandise is now for sale on the internet. It's at Cabela's, Kittery Trading Post, LL Bean, and you see a lot of people wearing it. It's particularly recognizable in New England, but even outside of New England, it's recognizable. And that's a good thing. Marketing logos and things, so those are all plans. Camp Northwoods, we talked about that. These are some of the shots. That's Sarah Miller. I don't know if you remember her from the show or not, but she was on there a little bit. She's one of the, I actually helped recruit her about 6 years ago. She rode with me for a ride along. And it was during hunting season, and I was pretty impressed by her. I said, Sarah, just keep in touch with me. Let me know how things are going. I kind of gave her a little task list of things to complete to help get her in the right direction. She calls me the next day and says, John, I just shot the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life. Big buck. I probably should have put that picture in here, but I wasn't thinking about it. So the very next day, she shot this huge deer, so she gets some more hunting experience and so on and so forth. And we hired her, and she's now a mentor cadre at our Warden Academy for new game wardens. And there's 2 women in that out of the 5, I guess, we hired this last time. And those 2 I saw since about high school. So it's really kind of neat. I've been at this long enough now that I've seen them in high school and kind of work up and become game wardens. And these 21-year-olds, I'm not trying to sound like the old guy, but they look like they're about 15. Eric Blanchard, you guys know him? Seen him on TV? These are some of his kids for the day, teaching them how to shoot with 22s. You can see they got pretty close with their targets. But they're having fun. They have no bad habits as shooters, so they're not like stubborn. And is that what time it is? Is it almost 1 already? I'll wrap things up, but take some questions. Anyway, he and I are good buddies, and he gets a kick out of this stuff. I go out just doing things that we do on days off together, and he still gets mobbed like he's John Travolta or something. It goes right to his head. This is Camp Northwoods, too. We land a seaplane there, one of our planes, and the kids get to crawl around in it and see him come and go. And really cool. Do some fishing. That's about it for that. Any questions you guys have at all? I've done all a lot of talking. Yeah. Yep.
Let's use the microphone since
Oh.
we are going to tape this.
Oh, okay.
We are taping this, so I'll just pass the microphone out with your questions. But thank you, John.
Yes.
What's been your most exciting call as a game warden?
For me?
Yes.
Oh boy. Most exciting call. Most exciting call. I guess it wasn't a call. I was already there. And I got 2 of them, and they both have to do with smelt fishermen. Inland stuff. And I was brand spanking new, and I was in Waterboro at Ospey Lake, Little Ossipee, sitting on the stream. A bunch of smelts were there, and this seasoned game warden was there, and he was an investigator at the time, and he says, if you could catch this guy, he says, you'll be my hero. And this guy was my hero, so the stakes were high, this game warden. So anyway, I'm staked out, and I do my thing, and I'm sitting in this place where no one will ever find me. And in rolls this truck at like 11:15 at night on a Wednesday, because that's when a lot of people do their things they shouldn't do because they think we're home sleeping. And they roll in. This is a little boat launch. You can picture it. It's about this time of year. All the ice shacks are moved in off the lake, so there's a bunch of them around the shoreline. It's cold, just like today. And the truck stops. It's got a camper in the back of the truck, slide-in truck camper. So I'm watching my binoculars. I'm probably 400 feet away, across the road, up on a hill, looking down like a bird. And they go out with their flashlights, and they're looking in the trees. They're looking in all the ice shacks. They're looking everywhere for me, or for a game warden. But I outsmarted them that day, and they couldn't find me. So they hop back in their truck, and they leave. And I'm like, oh, son of a gun. I lost them. And about 10 minutes later, this truck comes whizzing in with its lights off. It's the same truck. And they bail out, and I'm looking at them with the binoculars. There's one street light fairly close to them, so I can pick up most of what they're doing. And I see them take this great big smelt net out of the back of the truck and this huge cooler. And my heart's pounding like it's never pounded before. I couldn't even talk to myself. I just couldn't breathe. I'm doing controlled breathing. I'm looking through my binoculars. Okay, this is it. This is the big time. Brand new game warden. Zero experience. And other than training, which doesn't matter much until you do it on your own. So anyway, I start making the sneak because I know I got to make up 400 feet before they get back to the truck and do their thing and leave, because I don't want that to happen because I look like a dub. So I get pretty close, and I hear these guys breathing, and I hear water sloshing. And these guys are running back to the back of their truck. I'm about from me to Amanda from them now, to the wall. And I'm like, I got to do my thing. So freeze, game warden. I put my light on them, and they drop the bucket, or the cooler, which really is about this wide and about this, wide and deep, full of smelts. And they dropped them all over the parking lot, half of them anyway. So I got these flipping fish going all around. And these guys are running away from me. And I said, don't bother running, you're surrounded. And I was alone. And they like, whoa. They stopped, thankfully. And I even made a fake call on my radio and said, guys, I got them all mouth. I'm all set. I'll be good here. Trying to play real cool, controlled breathing. And these were the guys that the investigator told me to get. They were smelt dealers. And these smelts that they had in that cooler, we kind of tallied up with the street value. It was kind of like doing a drug thing. It was like $1,000 worth of smelts. It might have been more than that. It was a lot. And I caught them, and they paid their fines and whatever. So that was a really, really exciting. That was one of my first big ones. And I know I'm running out of time, but I got one more funny one. And we'll do some tricky things sometimes. Is that okay? Me and Tim Spar, another guy on the show there. This is probably 10 years ago, so it's an old story. Back when I used to do fun stuff. We're like, let's change it up a little bit. Let's get a unmarked vehicle from Central Fleet, which is where we get our vehicles from. Let's get a minivan today, and we're going to dress down, and we're going to go just smelting on our own. We're going to get some empty beer cans, and we're going to put them out in this place where we're going to go smelting. So we drive the minivan in. I left the door open, had a beer can or two kind of spilled out, and we're right in the brook. We're just shooting the breeze, hoping somebody comes, so to speak, to fish this closed smelt run. So sure enough, the truck we all want to hear as game wardens, you can hear them coming up over the hill, the 78 Chevy lift kit, 36-inch Super Swamper tires. Oh, comes up over the hill and got ZZ Top blaring. Just perfect. That's just how it was. And they come down in and they stop on the bridge. How's the fishing? How's the smelting? And it's me. And I'm like, it's awesome. I've never seen it this good. And like, man, I can remember them very, very well. So they come down and they get in the brook, and this guy's right next to me with his net. He's going away at it. And I'm like, geez, you are getting some smelts. He's like, yeah, this is great. He says, we've been doing this forever. He says, the game wardens are never around. And they're like, did you check around? Because St. Savior, he was the game warden back then. He's always, this is the game warden I said that told me about these other guys. He's always hiding us in the trees. I'm like, oh, we scoped it out. There's no game wardens. So they're going away. I says, I got to stop you. Fun. He's like, what are you talking about? He says, I'm a game warden. He's like, yeah, right. And he keeps going with this thing, and I lift up my coat, and I got my gun belt and my gun badge, and all that stuff. And lo and behold, these are pretty bad guys. They both had warrants for their arrest. One was a sexual predator. Bad guys. We had a minivan. We didn't really expect to arrest anybody that night. So we put them in handcuffs, and they're in the back seat. And they were actually pretty decent to us to talk to. And this is a true story. I got a little lost going to the jail. And I actually had to stop, and I asked, because he was from the area, I said, how do we get to the jail from here? This is before, like, Siri and iPhones and all that. And I didn't have my truck, so I didn't have my DeLorme. I'm like, how do I get to the jail? And this guy told me. And so we continued to jail. But that was another funny story. It wasn't super intense, but I've had some more intense ones, I guess. Gun drawn type of things, but I'm running out of time. But I'll take some more questions. Yeah.
Sorry, hang on just a sec. Thank you.
Have any of the game wardens been severely injured by animals or people?
Have any game wardens been severely injured by animals on the job? Not really. But ironically, just ticks have been the worst on game wardens. We've got several with Lyme disease. But as far as like being attacked by a bear or something like that, it doesn't generally happen that often. We got training for that, so when we release bears and capture them to relocate them and stuff, we take a lot of care in that. It's people that we're most concerned about. They're the most unpredictable. We don't really manage animals. We kind of leave that up to the biologists. We manage people as game wardens. So our biggest threat to us really is people that are unpredictable and people that have an intent to hurt us or whatever. But animals, no, hasn't been much of an issue. Yeah.
John, I got Lyme disease last summer, so I hear that pain as well. I have a quick question, just mainly for our younger audience, but also just for everybody. What are the qualifications required to become a game warden?
Yeah, I get that a lot. It's a combination of things. It's Amanda and I talked about on the way up. It's one distinct thing that we look for that other agencies don't in law enforcement, such as state police or county. They don't care if they're people hunting fish, but we do. So that's the one major distinction about game wardens, I guess, versus other law enforcement. You have to have those skill sets and appreciation, passion of that culture, the laws, in order to be an effective game warden for communication purposes, and just talking with people. You have to have an appreciation of the laws to know that there's so many laws that if you do hunting and fishing, trapping, all that stuff enough, chances are you're probably going to break a law along the way. And sometimes without trying too hard, you might not know of a new law or whatever. So having that understanding that you can do those things and maybe give someone a break in that situation is key. If you didn't have that perspective and depth of knowledge about how you could get into that situation, it'd be tough. And it's also knowing that someone might deserve a summons because they definitely should have known better, or they were intentional, or those types of things. So the first thing is hunting and fishing. That in and of itself doesn't make the best candidate. You got to be a, hard worker, honest, physically fit, well-spoken. That's probably, I can't emphasize that enough. You can have the very, very best candidate on paper. They went to the best school, they got the best grades, they hunted and fished, but if they can't communicate well with people, we're not going to hire them. If they're totally black and white, if they're way too mushy, you have to have someone that can fit on both ends of the spectrum and someone in the middle. You have to have the game warden that can appreciate a 9-year-old, 6-year-old catching their very first fish for the first time and being happy for them and maybe helping them bait the hook, because maybe you've been there, maybe you had a child of your own who does that. So you have to be compassionate about that and get into that and like it, know what it means to that kid or the father or mother that's with them. On the other end of the spectrum, you got to have the game warden that can take someone's life in a situation where you need to protect your own life or someone else. You have to make a death notification, tell someone their son or child has died, or their parents, or their brother or sister. And then you have to be the person in the middle that can make those good calls and kind of do both those things. And it's pretty easy to find this person, but it's not really easy to find the person that can do both. And so you got to think about those things. If you're looking to be a game warden, get yourself in front of people for jobs. Manage people somewhat, or public relations, or customer service, or police work, or really anything that teachers, that puts you in touch with people so that you're good at talking with people. Because there's a big difference between, "Hi, how you doing? Warden Service, can I see your license?" And going through that routine versus, "Hey, how's it going? How's the fishing today?" And you strike up a conversation. And we try not to hire the person that's ultra black and white and try to get both sides. But that makes sense. What else did I miss? Staying out of trouble. Drug use, criminal history. I'm going to keep bringing up Amanda. We talked about a lot of things on the way up. One of the only jobs in the world where you have to take polygraph examinations, psychological examinations, is police work. I don't even ask that of the President of the United States, polygraph exam. I think they get pretty much all their closets looked into along the way, but maybe not. But what we have to do is go through a background packet of financial stuff, criminal history stuff, work history, friends, family, blah, blah, blah. And it's easy to find out what people have done for criminal activity because there's usually a record of it somewhere, right, and got caught. But what we're most concerned about is what you've done that you didn't get caught for. And sometimes it's a big deal. Sometimes it isn't. But it depends on the person, what they've done. But when you carry a gun and you have the ability to take people's rights away by arresting them or making decisions that could put them in jail or make them a criminal or a felon for the rest of their life, we have to do as good a job at hiring good people as we possibly can. It's one of our most important things that we do, is to try to hire good people. And so we put them through that battering of tests. So if you're thinking about being a game warden, maybe not. You think about those things. If I do this and I'm in a group and I'm going to be doing something criminal or bad that I'm not, think about it as the important or the newspaper test. Do I want this in the newspaper about me tomorrow? And if the answer and the gut feeling is no, then you probably shouldn't do it. At the same time, one important note, I know I'm taking forever, but everybody makes mistakes. I am no exception. But there's big mistakes that you can't make, that you can't take back. And we have automatic disqualifiers that if you have done this one time, you're not going to be a game warden with us. And so think about that. Get into a group of peers that are going to do something wrong. It's not easy sometimes to do the right thing, but do it as often as you can. And there's a big line bar graph that we look at with people age 12, 18, 20, 30, 40, or whatever. There's a big spike when they get to about 17 or 18, 19, 21, and then it drops off. And it's very, very common for people to make their mistakes, men or women really, between 16, 17, and 21. A lot of things happen, and we see that graph with almost everybody. I was the same way. I didn't do anything really bad, but it didn't become a pattern anyway. That's what we look for. What we don't want is to hire somebody that has one of these, like a heartbeat graph. Make a mistake, didn't really learn, did it again, make a mistake, didn't really learn. We can deal with the people with the average graph, depending on what they've done. Experimenting with marijuana once at age 17 is much different than dealing in marijuana at age 17. So we can overlook some things because not everyone's perfect. No one's perfect. And if you're perfect and you've never done anything wrong, you're probably not going to make a good police officer because you won't have any perspective on how could you do that wrong. But so I've gone over.
Well, thank you very much, John. Let's have a round of applause for him. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great story. I think from our perspective in our organization, we're protecting the natural world, and I know our summer students have been learning mainly on the science side, and as an organization, we're focused on the ecosystem science side, but really this all overlaps. There's many ways to go out and protect the great outdoors. It could be through climate science, it could be through becoming a game warden.